And so in science, we don't really want to say, oh, there is a difference, or I accept the alternative. We always want to leave a little bit of room for doubt. It's never certain. And the reason it's never certain is, and I'll give you the 1 minute explanation. And see if, and this may not make sense, but hopefully it'll tie together. If I had a quarter in my hand, and you call it a fair quarter, which means it's not weighted heads or tails, it's a fair quarter. If I flipped it 10 times, what do you think it would come up? It may come up 5 heads, 5 tails, right? It may come up 6 heads, 4 tails. Do you think if I flipped an even coin 10 times, it could come up 10 heads, 0 tails? Yeah, it could, right? It could come up 10, 0. Now, if I flip that same coin 100 times, do you think it could come up 50 heads, 50 tails? Yeah, it could. Do you think it could come up 60 heads, 40 tails? Yeah, it could. The more I flip it, the closer it's going to be to 50-50, because that's part of just large numbers. It's going to be 50-50, closer to 50-50. But do you think if I flipped a fair quarter 100 times, I could get 70 heads and 30 tails? Yeah, I could. Is it possible? Yes, it's possible. Do you think if I flipped a fair quarter 100 times, it's possible it could come up 100 heads and 0 tails? Yeah, it's possible, but it's not what? Probable. It's possible, but it's not probable. And so that's why we never say, I accept the alternative hypothesis, because that means you're certain that the null is wrong. So in science, what we do is we phrase it like this. We say, I either reject the null hypothesis or I fail to reject the null hypothesis. So if I reject the null hypothesis, what's another way of saying that? I accept the alternative, but we don't like to say that because there is a possibility that I've made a mistake, right? There's a possibility that I could have a probability problem, right? That's possible. It's not probable. So what we do is when we're doing statistics, we set the probability at 0.05. What that means on the tail of a curve, on a curve, 0.05 is way out there. It's way out there on the curve. Remember that from Pollitt and Beck and all those other things? It's way out there. And 0.05 is just a little bit of the curve. And what it means is if our data is way out there on that curve, there's something different about it. There's something different. And so there's something different. What is the null hypothesis? There is no difference. So if something's way out there, we're saying, you know what? Yeah, there is a difference. So I'm going to reject the statement that there's no difference, right? And so in social science, in social and behavioral sciences, we set that rejection at 0.05, because 0.05 is sitting way out there. It's way out there. Do you want me to give you a real life explanation, like a real life illustration that's kind of funny? That I always give this to students. So let me close my door.
Oh no. Carl, I'm recording this.
Yeah. So when I was in high school, I had biology. And there was a guy that sat next to me. And he was really smart. And I was concerned about other things than biology at the time. And he ended up getting straight A's, right? And when he took the SAT, in my era of the SAT, which is Jill's era, the SAT was scored out of 1,600. 1,600 was the highest was a perfect test. So my classmate got a 1600 on the SAT. And he was the valedictorian of my high school. And he got accepted to Harvard and everywhere because he had straight A's. It was back when you could get a 4.0. He had straight A's and he had a perfect SAT. And so at my graduation, the counselor got up and said, hey, your valedictorian would normally give a speech right now, but he can't because he's the only person in the United States that got a perfect SAT. And so President Reagan wanted to meet him today. So he flew back east. So he's your valedictorian. So sorry, he's not here. So I was like, okay. So he got accepted to Harvard and I didn't. I went somewhere else. So, but the somewhere else I went was where his dad went to college. And he liked his dad's college. And so while I was living on the campus of this college, I looked across the campus one semester, and there's the valedictorian from high school, who I was friends with. I'm like, hey, what's up? So on his SAT score, the average SAT score is 900. He had a 1600. How far out there was he on the curve? He was at the very end of it, right? In a room of 100 people, 99 people would have a lower SAT than him, right? Mm-hmm. So we go to college together. He majors in biology. I major in something else. What do you think he becomes at my college? The valedictorian. So my high school valedictorian was my college valedictorian too. So he gave the speech at my college graduation. And he ended up going to Stanford, and he has an MD and a PhD. And he's a pediatric oncologist. Wow. And the thing that really bugs me about him, so on the curve, where is he on the curve? I am one standard deviation to the minus in everything, except for hair. My hair is like, my lounge lizard hair is 2 standard deviations to the right. This is, right? It's out there. I better put it out. He's way out there in terms of intelligence, everything. He's way out there. There's something different about him. If you said, oh, he's just average, no, he's not. He's 3 standard deviations from the mean on everything. And to make matters even worse, he's incredibly good looking and athletic.
Oh, no.
I hate him. Right? So I always show his picture to my students, but I don't think I can show you. I can show Jill. Maybe you can share this.
All right, I will. He's not in the area under the curve.
He's not under the area for the curve for anything.
At least he's doing good in the world.
Yeah, no, he's brilliant. Mm. And okay, let me send this to Jill, and then Jill can send this.
I'll send it to you.
And you can see that I'm not kidding you.
Well, now you can be teaching pediatric oncologist, Carl.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's good.
So that's his picture. He's actually a swimmer. Swims.
Oh no.
But anyway, so I always think about when you think about a curve, right? It's like, so if you just said, hey, this guy is average, and that's the null hypothesis is there's no difference between him and me. No, there's a difference. He's way out there. He's way out there. So that's kind of the curve. Then we reject the null hypothesis of no difference. Right? Yeah. Even on looks, Jill. Am I right? I probably shouldn't even be saying this. This is probably like microaggressive.
I don't dare to open it because it was saying my connection's unstable if I was trying to open it.
Okay.
So
yeah, but this guy is like all around. He's just all around. Everything is great about him. So I would think that, okay, he's way out there. So anyway, so that's my take on the curve.
I always think of probability too, like how I was taught the whole black swan thing. Like you can say, oh, all swans are white because every swan I see is white. But there might be one black swan out there, so you can never, you can never see all the swans, so you can never say 100% certainty that all swans are black. So you say,
exactly.
All the
that's all philosophy of science.
Yeah,
right. Exactly. That's Karl Popper, K-A-R-L Popper, and that's all. It's very interesting stuff. The other one is David Hume, Essay Concerning Human Understanding. It's all like philosophy of science stuff that you can never, and one time I had a professor that said something like, she was a mathematician and she was just kind of looking off in space. She goes, have you ever wondered what would happen if the world didn't follow the laws of probability? And she was just kind of saying that, and I was like, oh my gosh, what do you mean? Like I'm gonna fall and hit the ceiling? Or it's just interesting to think about stuff like that.
Those philosophers.
Yeah, there you go.
All right.
All right.
So the question that I had asked, how did you answer it? Was so if she rejected the null,
Yep.
so that there is no association. So there is an association, but it's
There
a
is.
small one. So is that related
weak.
in any way to effect size? And you're saying yes, there's it's 0.000. An association is there.
Yeah, it would be.
But
It would be.
so small.
Right. Yeah, in a roundabout way. Yeah, just a small. Yep.
Okay.
The math, you'd have to use a little bit more math to do that.
Yeah.
That's right.
So did you get the data set? Were you able to open that?
Yes, I haven't opened it though.
So maybe we can go, Lisa has one that she wants to do a recode on.
Okay.
So remember you guys way back when I told you how there's like a hierarchy of level of evidence. So the smallest or the categorical is the lowest level, and ratio is the highest. And ratio, because it's on the scale of 0, has an absolute 0 with equal measurements in between, that can be cut up into chunks, right? So you can say you have a BMI that's ratio level, but then you want to say, well, I want to look at obesity, right? So you can say, okay, values from 0 to 29.9, those I can say are not obese, and 30 above, those are obese. So you can break that ratio data down into categorical data, obese or not obese. So that's the beauty about having that ratio, and that's considered the best level data because you can break it down into smaller categories.
Mm-hmm.
So in the data, Lisa was asking that the null is there's no difference between cholesterol levels in elderly men and women who drink more than a moderate amount of beer per day.
Right.
So, and then maybe why don't we run that one first, and then we can see if we can switch the question that you had after that.
I don't know if I can even run it on my home computer.
Okay.
Because I have a lower level of SPSS.
I sent you what I ran, but that was different. Like I said,
Let me look. I'm eating pizza as we're going here because I ate lunch at 11. So.
Well, how about Joanne's? Is she an easier one to start out with?
Let me look at Lisa's.
And Joanne's might be a good one too. So psoriasis has ordinal and ratio is A1C.
Let me see Joanne's.
So no relationship between glucose control and severity of psoriasis.
Okay. So let me look. I'm looking at Joanne's. So when you say psoriasis is ordinal, so what you're really saying is, like, how many levels of psoriasis are there?
There's it was like how much trouble psoriasis was to the.
Okay.
And there's like 3.
Okay, so 3. Oops.
Yeah.
I was going to share my screen. Are you guys seeing the SPSS?
Yeah.
Okay. That's Joanne's?
This is the data that we had. So is it this one? Let's see.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is it. Yeah.
So it's here. How much of a problem has psoriasis been? And then.
Okay. So it's DEQ 055. So go to data view.
Okay. What was it?
55. Okay, there it is.
There.
Did a lot of people not answer it?
Yeah.
That would be hard. Like that?
There was me and another student that because there's like no one.
So maybe because they don't have psoriasis, they said.
Right.
Well, that's what I was thinking with that question, like that everyone would have had it, but obviously not.
Right.
Should I run another?
Yeah, that's a good question, but you don't have enough people that responded with that.
Should I?
Yeah, we wouldn't have a big
Like you
enough
could
sample size.
Yeah, you could do race. You can do anything that is like, well, I mean, you can't do anything, but anything that is that you can put into buckets, like buckets of people, like, you know, psoriasis, like not a problem, sort of a problem, yes, a problem. Because even though that's ordinal, it still has the properties of a nominal variable.
So if
Let me go back, Joel.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to get. Let me see, because I can run ANOVA. Okay.
I did a recode of hemoglobin A1C too, and so I said, I think diabetes.
Yeah, like yes or no.
Yeah, at 6.5. But I don't think I did it right. But that's one we could show them maybe.
Okay.
So do you want to share your screen?
I don't know if I can. Let me, yeah. Stop sharing, and let me see if I can do mine.
Okay.
Okay. So A1C is the dependent variable, right?
Well, we could say so, sure.
Oh, wait a minute.
So why don't we could do, is there an association between gender and diabetes? Or
Yeah.
we could say
race
else?
and diabetes. However race is coded.
Or what about diabetes and depression? Because we have depression as a ratio, and then we could say diabetes, yes or no. So we'd have categorical and ratio.
Yeah, you could. Let me think. I have to stop and think for a second how you would do it, what you would do. So, okay, there's BMI. I mean, that looks appropriate right there. Oh, you can't see what I'm doing. How do I share my screen?
You should be able to click on that green button.
Okay, so you can see it? So right here?
No, we're looking at the worksheet.
Yeah, this worksheet right here.
Yep.
So that looks appropriate right there because they're both ratio. So you just run a straight correlation, like a Pearson correlation on lens, right? On this one, and this is Joanne. So
I would just have to pick another ordinal category.
Yeah, or nominal. Like what you really want is nominal. Like you could do race and A1C, right?
In the ANOVA.
Right, and that would be ANOVA because you'd have different categories. But again, the other thing too is because it fits the assumptions of the statistical procedure, there has to be, you also want to make sure there's some theoretical reason why you're doing that, right? Like, so there is a theoretical reason why you'd want to pick race, for example, and diabetes, because I think there's probably a link to it, I guess, right?
Right. They all, in their research plans, they had to come up with a background and the significance and a framework that showed that there's some kind of rationale for them running the tests that they did.
Yeah, exactly. So you want to make sure you do that. That's perfect. Yep.
Professor Carl?
Yeah.
So race would be kind of hard to show, like, with the relationship with A1C. Like, would it be like age, like the older the person is and the more chances of diabetes? Or
I would think you could just, I mean, I don't know. Everybody knows I'm not a nurse. I'm a gerontologist, so I study aging. So isn't there a link between race and diabetes?
Yes. Yeah,
right?
good.
So like Native American, higher
we
African
could
American.
run that one.
Okay.
Right. So
I
you
could
could
try and
have,
run that
so
one.
there's like a theoretical reason why you would think, oh, I think there's something going on. And so what you're doing is just confirming that at this point.
Okay.
Right. And so that would work, I think.
I could try run it real quick right now.
Yeah, I think I can too.
Oh. You want to race?
I don't remember. Yeah. I don't remember which one, whose is whose. Is that you? Or is
It's
that you?
that's the data set we all use, so I can try.
This is us.
See, here is race, right? And then where is A1C?
Right, 23.
So 23. So it's 4. Let's see if it's 4 and 23. Okay, so if I ran it,
We'll analyze. So what test would we be running?
one-way ANOVA, right? So your factor is race, like this.
So the
And
factor is the independent variable.
Yeah, the factor, when you switch over to ANOVA, they don't call it independent variables, but it is. They call it factors then. And then the A1C.
Yeah, go up a little. It's called glycosylated. There it is. Yep.
Is that it?
Yep.
Then you go that, you shoot that in there, right? So I want to see, is there a relationship? And then I probably want to run a post hoc test, which I don't know if you talked about that. Like you could run probably Tukey is an all-purpose.
Yeah, in the video it said run the Tukey.
Right, and then the options you can run this homogeneity of variance just to see. That's an assumption. And you can also do descriptives and means plots, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and then it goes up.
Did you go through all that in 613 and statistics?
Yeah, I try to. Where did it go? Okay, here it is. So here's how you would interpret this.
You got the results. I didn't get the results.
How
Did you get that?
are you using? It didn't say something like did it give you an error message or something?
Well, it says I have it. I have it.
Okay.
Sorry.
Does it look like this?
Let me go back.
I should be drinking my apple juice.
That's so interesting.
Okay, so what this is saying is what is the hemoglobin or glycohemoglobin?
That's the A1C.
And
Yeah.
is okay. And so over 6 is diabetic, right?
Right. Or poorly controlled, yeah.
Okay. So and below that, so below 6 is okay, is better.
It's better.
So you can see right here, here's what the means are. So the Mexican American A1C, the average is 6.1. The other Hispanic is 5.9, right?
Right.
This is what's so interesting, I think.
Right. The non-Hispanic white is 5.7. And
Yep.
as a non-Hispanic white, that seems a little low to me. Having just taken this test, right? So here we go. So your homogeneity of variances right here.
Yeah.
So what this is saying is, are these kind of out of whack? Like, are the curves for each of these like this? Right? Are each of them very similar, like all similar? And actually what this is saying is that these are not that similar, right? And I can kind of tell you why. So what this is saying is you have an assumption violation. There's a violation of an assumption right here, right? It's not fatal, but the reason you probably have it is, look at how many non-Hispanic whites are in this sample. Look at how many other Hispanics are in this sample. It's pretty lopsided. Now, a lot of times, ANOVA can handle lopsided groups like that, but it can't handle that. That's too lopsided. Because what it's doing is it's throwing this standard deviation off, probably, and it's making a lot of variance between 0.58 and 1.4, right? So what I'm saying is, can you see me? Can you see my hands?
I
Or
can
no?
see your screen.
All you can see is my screen. Okay, let me show you something. What this is saying is, for the other Hispanics, the curve, if you plotted it, looks like this, right? The curve for Mexican Americans looks like this, right? They're not the same. In order to run an ANOVA, it all needs to be fairly close like this, right? They all need to be kind of like that. Because what you're doing is you're comparing data, if it's not, that's kind of all over the place, right? It's not fair to compare, people that are 60 with people. It's not fair to compare a group of people with an average age of 60 to a group of people with an average age of 25, for example, or something like that, where there's a lot of spread. So that's one of the things. So with this test right here, there's a little bit of a problem. Now, it's nothing fatal. You don't really need to worry too much, but if you're doing this for real, you want to be concerned about that. Okay, then the second thing is this right here. This is actually the ANOVA test. And this F stands for Fisher, and Fisher was the guy that developed the ANOVA test. Yeah. And so, again, what is the null hypothesis?
That there's no
Difference.
no relationship.
No difference. What this statistic right here, do you see this 0.000?
Yeah.
What this is saying is this F right here is significant because this is less than 0.05. If this is less than 0.05, this statistic is significant and we reject the null hypothesis. So, what does it mean to reject the null hypothesis? What's the null hypothesis? There's no difference. So, the null hypothesis is there's no difference between these groups.
Right.
But this statistic tells us you need to reject that. There actually is a difference between these groups. Now the question is, which group differs from which group? That's the post hoc test. And if you go right here to the post hoc, this is the multiple comparisons. Okay, so I know this looks confusing. Are Mexican Americans different from other Hispanics? No. Right? If we go up here, are Mexican Americans with a mean of 6.175 different than other Hispanics with a mean of 5.9? No. They're too close together. They're not different. What about Mexican Americans and non-Hispanic whites? Yes, they're different. See, 0.000. So they are different. Now, this is this Tukey's this is this Tukey post hoc test. Tukey was a mathematician. I think he was from Princeton. So from Mexican Americans and non-Hispanics, there's a difference. What about Mexican American and non-Hispanic black? No difference. What about Mexican American and other race? No difference. Now, if you go to the means plot down here, it should show you. See, the lowest group down here is non-Hispanic white with a mean A1C of 5.70. This group, so what this is saying, I hope this isn't confusing. What this is saying is this group right here is not different from this group. And this group is not different from this group. And this group is not different from this group. The group that is different is this group is different from this group. But this group is not different from that group, and it's not different from that group, and it's not different from that group. Even though it's close to that group, the only groups that are different here is this group is different than this group. Does that make sense? I know that's tough to...
It's hard, yeah, with the visual, it's hard to see why that's so.
It's hard to see, but we're trusting the math.
Yeah.
Because we're going to go back up to Tukey. Tukey's saying the only groups that differ are Mexican American and non-Hispanic white. That's it. That's right here. Mexican American, and non-Hispanic white. This group is close enough to this group that they don't differ, and this group is close enough that they don't differ, and this group is close enough that they don't differ. Right? The only groups that differ are that one because it's way out there, and that one because it's way down there. Does that help?
Yes. Thank you.
I know it's slightly confusing, but if you keep looking at it over and over and you keep talking about it, it'll make sense eventually.
So maybe with we could do Lisa's where there's beer consumption and cholesterol. So
Okay, let me look at that one.
All right.
Let me stop sharing. I have another piece of pizza. My mother-in-law bought a box of pizza at Costco, and she doesn't even eat cheese pizza, and so she gave it to us, so I'm starving.
nice.
Okay, so let me get out of this.
I don't know how to run a multi-factor ANOVA.
I don't think I can run it. I can't
remember.
run it on this computer.
But
can't
Lucy,
run it on
we
this.
could do them separate. We could say, is there a difference between, or there is no difference between gender and cholesterol? And then the other one is, there's no difference between beer consumption and cholesterol.
The way I was gonna do it, is it wrong if I did an ordinal logistic regression? But I don't, because it said if you have an ordered logistic regression is used when you have the dependent variables ordered but not continuous, and you have more than one independent variable.
I think regression is when you have more than one dependent variables, and we were trying to keep this with only one dependent variable, so it was bivariate statistics. So that's I didn't want to go into that one, but yeah, you're right. That's how you would do it. If you had two or more dependent variables.
Okay.
Yeah, this is getting like beyond the scope of this class.
Yeah.
Because it's tough to run this. Like you said, you got a 16-page output.
Yeah.
Like if I ran this, I'd have to sit here for about 2 hours and figure it out.
Somehow I always make things more complicated. I'm very good at doing that.
But you could do something like, you could actually, do you have the data for this? You could actually run a correlation. You could run a Spearman row, and you could see if beer consumption, gender, and cholesterol are related.
Okay.
And you click on, well, no, I wouldn't do that.
Where am I here?
I would have to think about this.
Yeah.
But we could, how about if we just look at beer consumption and cholesterol?
Yeah, you could do beer consumption and cholesterol. And you could, why did you say beer consumption is ordinal? How come it's not ratio?
It's in a table of, and that's the other thing. I had to go with what the database shows, and there's like about 10 items. So it's either it goes from never, 1 time a month or less, 2 to 3 times a month, 1 to 2 times a week, 3 to 4 times a week, 5 to 6 times a week.
Right.
Yeah. I don't even think I could do what I wanted to do with this because it's 1 time a day, 2 to 3 times a day.
Right.
And moderate use is 1 time or 2, so.
Yeah, what if we recode it to drinking the recommended amount to more than the recommended amount? So for, we could recode it to less than 2 drinks a day, and then the other variable more than 2 a day.
You could. It's interesting, like a method. This is a method question. It's way more accurate. Get that guy out of here if he's not paying tuition. It's way more accurate.
Sorry.
To ask people, like, how much do you drink in a week? 0, or 100, because that's a ratio level. But people wouldn't answer that question like that.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't go, oh yeah, I had 17 drinks this week. So they ask them, Kaiser does this too. Like, do you exercise? Instead of asking how much do you exercise, they'll give you those ordinal categories, like, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, etc. Because it's easier to answer, but it's a lower level of data. So that's a funky question, but that's why people do that. So it is ordinal.
Okay.
So could you show us how to recode something in this data if it's too complicated with the
Yeah,
beer?
it's going to take me a few minutes because I don't do it all the time. But has anybody in the class recoded anything?
I tried doing something today.
Okay.
So
yeah,
want me to share my screen and you can tell me if I'm doing it right?
Yeah. I don't recode stuff that frequently, so I usually have to figure it out. I think you go up to either data or transform.
Yeah. So let's how about if we look at BMI?
Okay.
The body mass index. So we can go to transform, recode into different variables.
Yeah.
And then I'll go, where's BMI? And then it says, give it another, I just watched the YouTube on this. This is the only reason I know how to do this.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll say BMI recode.
Mm-hmm.
Recode and BMI recode.
Mm-hmm.
And then change, and it changes it up there.
Mm-hmm.
And then we choose old and new values. So we're going to go use a range. So we'll say, let me get rid of these. So we'll say range. So lowest through. So what's so my framework or my rationale for this would be, I would call
like underweight, or
we could say, yeah. So obese versus non-obese. So what is clinically obese?
Is it 30 or 35? 30. Is it? 25 overweight?
Yep. So we would put 29.9 there. Does that work?
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll say that's value number 1. And then should I say range for the highest, or all other values would be number 2?
I think all others.
All others. So that would be 30 and above. And I saw the highest BMI in this set was 52 something. So
Wow.
yeah, that's a lot. So then I'll add that one. So we're going to have one variable. So that's non-obese, and the other one is obese.
Yeah, I think that's right.
We'll continue that and say OK. And then I just get a little output thing that shows me that it's there. And then when we look on this, we have BMI recode.
Yeah, you're now recode. Yeah.
So does anyone have a question they wanted to ask? Or in our worksheet, did anyone look at the relationship between obesity and something? We could look at, want to look at obesity and A1C, or obesity and depression. We could do that one. So we could go, so we're going to do obesity and depression. So what test would I run? So obesity, yes or no, is what kind of variable? Shout it out, students. Is it ratio?
No. Nominal? No.
Nominal? Categorical, so yeah, nominal or dichotomous. So we're going to run categorical with a ratio. So what test would we run? With 2 levels, 2 independent groups. You guys have your little cheat sheet there. This is scary. I have this book with me everywhere.
Independent is the key word.
So we have 2 independent groups with a ratio. So independent t-test. So I go to analyze, and then where is that here? Compare me.
Mm-hmm.
Independent sample t-test. And then grouping variable would be the new one I just made.
Yep, your new recode.
And then we're looking at depression. I think it's that one.
Yep. And then you have to define the groups. So click where it says BMI recode right there, and then define groups. And just type a 1 there. Just a 1 and then a 2, and that'll work.
And then do we have to say any options or anything?
No, I think you're okay.
Okay.
And then hit it.
Oh, you know what? I'll have to reshare my screen because can you see that?
Yeah.
The output?
There we go.
Oh, good. Okay. So I'm not sure exactly what this means. So maybe you can translate.
Okay.
It for us.
So what it means, the top one, right where it says group statistics, that's just giving you the descriptive stuff. So group 1 is not obese, right?
Right.
1 is not obese. There were 670 people in that, and their mean was 0.2355 for depression. Group 2 is obese, and there were 329 people in that, and their mean was 0.2958. Okay? Their standard deviation looks very, very similar. So the curves look very similar. The data look similar. Now, if you scroll down, that top row where it says independent samples T, and then it says Levine's test for equality of variances, right? So one of the assumptions of an independent T is obviously that the groups are independent, right? So these groups are independent, which what that means is it possible for me to be in the non-obese group and also in the obese group?
No.
No. So these are independent groups, right? And vice versa. So that's one of the assumptions. The other assumption is the equality of variances. That, just like on the F test, that the curves are the same. And so there's a statistical test called Levine's test for equality of variances. If that top row, right there, that top row, so you're testing that assumption. And what it's saying is, are these variances similar or not? And the problem is, I'm kind of laughing, is this test, the way you interpret this test is actually counterintuitive. So I think what it means is if that's less than 0.05, you actually have to drop down on the row below. You have to drop down to the row below because the variances are not equal. So even though up there that standard deviation 0.33676 is very close to 0.36776, they're different. This data is different, these two sets of data. So Levine, I'm rejecting the null hypothesis of equality of variances right there because it's 0.007. I need to, if it was, say it was 0.04, I would stay on the top row. But what I have to do is I have to drop down to the row below it where equal variances are not assumed, because what I'm doing is I'm violating one of the assumptions of the t-test. So let's interpret it. Let's drop down on that bottom row. So I get the t. Do you see the t score of negative 2.504? So I don't really know what that means because I don't have a textbook with a chart in the back of it. So I have to rely on SPSS to tell me if it's significant or not. So I go to that number, 0.013, significant, two-tailed. If that number is less than 0.05, it means that the t is significant and I reject the null hypothesis. So, quiz question, is 0.013 less than 0.05? No. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, it is. It is less than 0.05.
That always is the hardest thing.
It's less than 0.05.
Yes.
So I reject the null hypothesis, right? So I go back to that t and I say, oh, that t is significant because it's less than 0.05. So the data up there, even though those means, do you see the mean of 0.2355 and 0.2958? They look like they're really close together. In reality, they're not close together. They are significantly different from each other. There's a significant difference between people that are not obese and people that are obese in terms of how they score on this depression test.
Interesting.
And it's significantly different. Now, let's go back to the coin flip. I am certain that I should reject the null hypothesis that there is no difference. I believe there is a difference. I'm so convinced of that the chance of me being wrong is only one chance out of 100, because that number right there is 0.013. I only have a one chance out of 100 of committing an error when I tell you that those numbers are different from each other. What's another way of putting that? Like, I'm really convinced those numbers are different. If I told you that there was a chance of rain tomorrow and it's 0.013, what would you do? Would you do anything? Would you take an umbrella? No. You wouldn't be concerned at all. So when we reject the null hypothesis and it's 0.013, the chance that we're going to make a mistake in that is only 1 out of 99. And I can live with 1 out of 99 making a mistake, right? Based on the odds of probability. Does that make sense? You're like, kind of. So in that example, you have a difference between those groups. It didn't look like a lot of difference to our naked eye when we're looking at the numbers, but there is a difference between those groups. They're different. They are different. The t-test told us, hey, reject the null hypothesis that there is no difference. Reject it. There is a difference.
Interesting.
Does that work?
I think somebody actually asked that one.
Right. That's why the statistical stuff is so interesting, because to our naked eye, it doesn't look like there's a difference. A lot of times it's like, no, there's no difference. But because there's that survey, you had like 700 people in one group. That's a lot of people. So even the slightest bit of difference, the t-test is going to pick it up and go, oh, no, they're different. Those groups are different, even though they look the same. Right? That's why statistics is so powerful, because it's using the laws of probability. Does that help? Or no? Did I confuse everybody?
Not me, but I've had 3 graduate level classes. Yeah, so I had to go back and watch YouTubes to remember how to do all this stuff.
But if you think about what I've said, I think I've probably only said maybe like 15 sentences, and I don't mean to minimize it, but if you want to do this stuff, you just have to get those simple phrases over, like the null hypothesis is there is no difference. If it's less than 0.05, I reject the null hypothesis, which means there is a difference. Every single statistic test is exactly the same in that regard. You're just trying to see, do you reject the null hypothesis or fail to reject it, right? And the way you interpret those SPSS things is, once you have a few of them down, they all kind of blend together.
And then there's the type 1 error and type 2 error.
Yeah, right. And the type 1 is rejecting the null hypothesis when there is, in fact, no difference. And the type 2 is failing to reject it when there is a difference. I think I have those right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just wrote those on the cover of my book.
Yeah, so you just write it down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Hard to remember them. All right, well, I think we ran a t-test, we ran an ANOVA, and we ran a correlation. So I think that's it. The only other thing was the ordinals, which is crosstabs, right?
I think so, yeah. That'll work.
Okay. You guys have any questions? If Lisa, Joanne, and Mayu, you just want to fill in this worksheet here. You don't have to do this week's discussion because you showed up tonight.
Okay, thank you.
So I can change mine then? Just be like...
Yeah, just change it right on the worksheet.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, Carl, thank you so much for...
Where is everybody calling in from?
I'm in San Diego.
San Diego? San Diego? I was at the zoo on Sunday. And we ate at the Obi Noodle Company.
Nice.
Really good.
Ask where Mayu's from.
Where are you from?
I'm calling in from Japan.
Oh my gosh, what time is it there?
It's 11 a.m.
Oh my word. But it's like 3 days from now, right?
One day, just one day.
It's already May. Isn't it already May? That's right. I remember.
You get the prize for being the farthest away.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Excellent.
All right.
I hope that was
thanks a
helpful. I
million.
hope I didn't confuse anybody.
No, that's good.
This was very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Call me
Nice
anytime.
seeing that data there. So. All right,
Yeah.
guys. Well, this is our last meeting. This is week 16. So good luck to everyone. And yes, just email me if you have any questions or anything on your final grade, and we'll be soon next week.
Bye, everybody. God bless.
Oh, and one other thing, Carl, if you need to go ahead. I was just going to remind everybody to do the evaluation. So I'll send out that link. But for the idea evaluation for the course, that'd be great if you could fill that in with some honest feedback. Okay?
Yeah. Thank
All
you.
right. Have a good
Bye,
night,
everybody.
everyone.
Good night.
Take
Thank
care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks again.